Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, so it's time to do the morning show again?
It is. It is.
Finish getting dressed.
It's been a slow weekend.
We've been under the weather and we've been sweating. I actually just took my shirt off and was in a t-shirt only just because it was so hot.
I don't think that we've ever experienced, we were like, people would say, have you had COVID? He had an antibody test before. We didn't get tested this time, but holy crap.
I think
we both were down all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And just Jim, I woke up this morning and I'm like, I'm hungry. And says, that's because you've had 2 tablespoons of food in 48 hours.
She spent, no kidding, spent most of the last 48 hours in bed.
Yeah.
So I thankfully recovered a little more quickly than she did. And, but wow.
So I have a new respect for what people have been through if they've experienced
I haven't had the flu. I mean, we don't know if it was COVID. We just assume so.
Whatever it was.
We headed out to a thing on Saturday morning and I had to pull over the car and let her drive. So I kept thinking I'm going to pass out. We ended up turning around and coming home and never left the house after that for the entire weekend. So anyway, we're feeling better today. We're trying to be troopers and put a smile on our face. We're both running on partial energy here.
So hi. I hope everybody had a good weekend. And it's in where we live in Utah, every city, we have this view of all of the different communities, and there's a lot of mini communities that we can see, and every one of them has some kind of city celebration. And our actual city had their celebration this weekend. And so it's like fireworks are still going off every single night. And it's, and then in Utah, they also celebrate the 24th of July, which is Pioneer Days. It's to celebrate when the first settlers came into Utah. And so we'll experience a lot of all the fireworks stands stay up until after that's done. So lots of fireworks. We're laying in bed. It's like, boom. Boom, boom. It's like, I don't want to get up and look at it, but I love fireworks. Absolutely do.
All good. Hi, Shelly.
Hi, Shelly.
We're thanks. We're feeling better. Better's a relative thing.
Just like, okay, so how do you feel? Maybe 60%.
Well, she's got very low energy, but I could tell every time she sat still, she wanted to lay down. Sleep.
So that's enough. That's enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that's enough.
Okay.
Okay. So the top, what do we August 1st, if you haven't bought your ticket, they are available through Eventbrite or through BHPHNationTV.com. It'll link you into Eventbrite to buy your ticket.
If you are a buy here, pay here dealer or underwriter, you're going to want to be there for that.
Yeah. So, it's on Deal Structure.
A lot of good stuff.
And it's going to be Chuck Bonanno and Brent Carmichael and Jim going over a lot of data that has been submitted.
Yeah. And just trying to help folks make a better decision about at the point of underwriting based on what history shows. Yeah. So that's all good
stuff. And then
September 18th, I've sending out more invitations on those. We got to,
if you got something coming up, that's a big shift for your business. This is an event that you want to go to.
A big pivot, some sort of big shift, like a, expansion. If you're selling, acquiring, recapitalizing, whatever, just any kind of big pivot coming in your business, then this would be a great event for you.
Yeah.
And we can say that we have our new CEO, Jerry Martinez, is going to be joining us.
We haven't said anything about that yet, have we?
So that's cool. He's going to be one of our coaches at this event. And you'll see in the coming days just what kind of resume Jerry brings. So leadership training. And
and 3-star general.
Yeah. Commander of the
Pacific
Japanese fleet.
He was there during all of the North Korea shooting off missiles and stuff like that, and is still on a ton of different committees for relations all through that
advisory
region too.
boards and
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
Yep.
and if you want to know a little bit more about him, he was in a special called Defending Japan from the History Channel.
Yeah.
So you can get a little bit of a view of that, and really, really outstanding. He's those of you who watch the morning show the day after the NIADA wrapped up, that we were in our car and we were about ready to meet with him. And so it's good stuff, really good stuff. So
absolutely. And a lot of other people coming into our circle as a result of all the things we've been working on. So it's
we have meetings this week too.
Yeah.
So
Things are really starting to take off. We've been getting traction. Now we're starting to get some action. So,
it's
good.
Really good.
Yep.
All righty.
Shall we go into these numbers?
Yeah, and see, I'm here for comic relief and for
put on a smile.
I'll try.
Yeah. Right.
Comic relief and to ask questions, because this is again some of the stuff that I don't really.
Yeah, that's okay.
Jim's a subject matter expert, and I don't need to be, so I get to ask questions.
You do not on this case, and this is an interesting topic. Like it's one that I've known about this number since I got in the business back in the late 90s, and so I'll kind of share. You can go ahead and put that on the screen. Okay. So, for those who are going to be catching this on audio only, then might be a little. Yeah. Try to increase the size. Might help when we do that. I forget sometimes to do that. But I'll try to get that where it's a little larger. And again, if you're listening to this, you can always go to YouTube, to our YouTube channel, and actually see the slides that we're putting up, because most podcast places that we're syndicated don't show video. Right. So I think, for this conversation, I would just try to help folks recognize that what's happening is you've got this calculation on, let's do that. Can we first talk about why you want to know this? Yeah, of course. Yeah. I asked the good questions. That's right. So the reason I think you want to know this, and I'll tell you, I think that we have to be careful with this kind of information, because that should be a little visible. We have to be careful because I think there's a limit to what we can deduce from this information. I think dealers, especially when they're new, find this interesting. And I would say it's just that it's interesting. It's kind of an interesting number to know. It's also kind of arbitrary. It doesn't have any correlation to financials. It doesn't have a lot of impact to much of the rest of the business. It's a calculation on, I've heard it called amount riding, amount on the street. Some software refer to it as, money on the street. Really what it's doing is it's taking cash and deal and is tracking it on a go forward basis, like on a running total basis. So that's what you're seeing on the screen. I call it a running investment in contracts. So what we're seeing here is an actual spreadsheet of a client that we have worked with since October, and we prepared this calculation. And so what you're seeing there on the screen is the numbers from, and I'll take you across, I've created a chart to kind of help visualize better, what this number means, but it's cash and deal first. You can see that row 52 there is cost of sold units, including recon. So in October, this particular dealer had $38,000 in cost in the first round of contracts, first month of contracts. Then we adjust the down payments of $5,700. That would give us a cash and deal for the month of October. Then we show the payments coming in, which were just a small number, only about $400 in payments in the month of October. So that means that our net risk in those contracts as we closed October was about $32,000. And then we go into the month of November, had a little more sales. We got more risk more risk in the contracts. Now we collected a little over $4,300 in payments. So we apply that. And so it's really just taking cash and deal and tracking it and applying payments. I think some might include repo proceeds in this. If you sold a repo, I choose not to. Same thing with tax, title, and license. While it's interesting to know, it's not something that I think is, something that it's optional. It's, if that's what you prefer to see, then add it. but basically this is the formula that you see there is you take, now if I look at row 56, that's my running total. And then this 77 in month 2 is the number for the month. So if I take the running total from October, I add in the total for the month of November, my new running total is 109. So I would look at that number, and let me just take you across to the far right side. You can see that this number kind of grows in terms of dollars by the end of June. We're actually looking at, real numbers for this particular dealer through the month that closed most recently. And you can see that that's $367,000 at risk in all contracts that are active. Once they come out of the portfolio, then, it really wouldn't come into play anymore. They're going to quit producing payments. And so so you're just looking at it on an aggregate basis.
You know what I see?
Tell me.
His buy here, pay here is pretty expensive, but the rewards are pretty great too.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I think, these numbers are actually higher than what this dealer would track with more time. We're barely October. You got 3 months plus. You got about 9 months of history here. So by 9 months, you can see
but it
also
looks like he's come down from 41% down to 32%.
Exactly.
So.
And that'll happen because, you can see the payments coming in. And by the way, I'm using principal and interest. This is all money coming in terms of car payments. And so that would come in. And if you had deferred down payments, you would add those in there too. This dealer doesn't have any, but yeah, that you're right. It's tracking down from the 40s, which makes sense. Early on, your cash and deal as a percentage of contract is probably in the 40s. And now it tracks down to about 32%. When I first got in the business in the 90s and looking at these numbers for dealers that were established, that number would get down to 10, 12%, probably even saw single digits.
That was a different time when cost of car was quite a bit different.
But it's still going to track. You can see this one's tracking, and you can see also if I show you the chart, then you can see how the gap increases. So this is as a percentage of receivables. That top line is going to be notes receivable principal, and that red line is going to be the amount writing. So you can see the gap just increases. Why? Because our cash and deal per month, volume's the same, down payments are the same. Our cash and deal per month remains about the same.
Payments make the
payments
difference.
Increase. We start collecting more and more payments as the portfolio grows, which means now the dollars that we have at risk, is one way to think about it. And the reason I say this is arbitrary, and we got to be careful about what we conclude here, is because this is discounting overhead. We don't have any consideration for overhead in this. And so to exclude overhead is, we can't do that in any business, really. We can't ignore the overhead piece, but I think the one thing that can be helpful here for dealers is it's comforting. I think when they can look at this and say, I have $1 million portfolio and my real cash tied up in that portfolio is 30% or 17%, when they can look at that and say my real cash in terms of cars, but again, that ignores overhead, but it's like we can say, okay, we own this portfolio in a way based on the real risk from the customers in those kind of percentages. So I think that's an indication that it's one indication, as you see, as somebody outside the industry, you look at that and you say, well, it's pretty profitable. The risk is low. And I think that's true if we choose not to
expensive, but profitable.
Yeah. Yep. And so I think what it does is that, again, we got to be careful because the overhead side, I mean, our accounting friends out there would tell you all these things we're talking about have no correlation to accounting. There's no correlation to P&Ls. The balance sheet, that top number, that would be your notes receivable. That's going to show up on your balance sheet. But this number on the red line, it's not going to be reflected in your financials anywhere. So I just think it's something we got to be careful about in terms of what we try to conclude from that information.
Yeah. And when we talk to different dealers, it's, we don't typically go directly into overhead, but when we're talking about where the cash is going and what's coming in and what's ebbing and flowing within the business, that comes up, and it's some people are running lean and other people are running really, really fat.
Yeah. You say in terms of overhead?
Of overhead.
Yeah, that's true. And we don't often see that with a lot of our clients. Our data relationship with them is really about is in the DMS. We don't see their financials. And so, we often don't have a good indication of that, but you're absolutely
Unless we've
right.
had the conversation, and it's kind of like, what are you spending on this? Because it's part of the reason why that conversation comes up is because it's like, well, I've got all of this, but why am I not seeing it? And it's like, well, let's look at the reasons or the things that draw from that and create a different spread.
Yeah. And I think another thing that we've done, I think we've done it with this same client, is we did sort of more like a pie chart that said, of all the money that you've invested up to now, this much has gone into creating contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And, then you can start to see, okay, so the rest of what I've invested in the business
is overhead.
It's going to be overhead.
Yeah. And that's a good thing because it does separate that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times dealers will look at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so and this actually pulls that out so that you have the opportunity to look at, what am I spending in overhead? How can I cut back and be able to appreciate the growth that I'm experiencing better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we can stop sharing that. I think, I think that's the part that, we just wanted to share was the calculation again, how to get there, but you're basically just taking your cash and deal. So for established dealers, you would you need to go back to if you're just building this and check your software, because your software, most softwares that we've worked with, you look for either amount writing report and be careful, because I think what I've noticed in some systems, they will continue to go negative. For example, if let's say you had a cash and deal of $4,000 and your customer's payment was $400 a month for simple math, then 10 months, your risk in that contract would be zero. But some DMS systems continue to track that to a negative. So if a customer made 2 more payments, they would be showing you at a negative $800. Whereas I'm accustomed to stopping that at zero. So, if you have negative numbers, I think that's sometimes going to give you a false sense of, where you're at. So just be careful, look inside the numbers, but look for amount writing. I also shared with a dealer out there a couple of weeks ago when this first came up, was that some of the softwares will call it street money. Like it's just kind of nomenclature in the industry. So you would check that and try to produce that report. But yeah, that's the thing is you probably can find this report in your system. Just be careful about what you conclude from it, because I think it's just information. It's not really much of an indication of your portfolio performance.
It is an indication, though, like you said, about overhead. It can be when you overlay what it is that's going out in comparison to this. And so it may not be something that's used for accounting, but it can be used for something managing what you're spending.
Good point. Yeah. So I think if, for example, what she's basically saying, no, I think, so what she's really referring to, if you look at the inverse side of this particular dealer has, at the end of June, has $367,000 tied up in contracts. So another way to look at that might be to say, if this dealer has $1 million invested in the business so far, then you could say, okay, so I must have about 630 invested in overhead, right? Because this is buying cars. This is of cars that were sold. You would also want to look at your inventory on the ground, because that's also another place that dollars went. But if you took this number plus inventory on the ground and subtracted everything you've got invested, the rest would be going into overhead, which is that now you're starting to get to something that's a little more telling, because I think when you look at those percentages, people will say, oh, the risk of these contracts is not as high. And I say this often, it's like, the risk of these contracts is not as high as it's perceived. They typically perform in a pretty predictable range. So now it's just back to overhead. What are we spending in overhead? What are we spending to get our business open? Or what are we spending monthly to, keep the doors open, whatever? Then now that's starting to get to a place that's more interesting. Look at those numbers, but that's probably good for today. I think that at least on that particular subject.
I don't have anything.
No, I don't either. I think, I know you're just barely.
I'm like
awake and
ready to
alive.
go back upstairs and go to bed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, good information though. I mean, I think that you downplayed how valuable it is to break that out, because when you can look at that as this is it's a good way to measure what kind of money is going out and overhead.
Yeah, and I think it's, as I said, it can be comforting to dealers to
Mhm.
look at that and say, I only own my portfolio for 17%.
Mhm.
It can be is somewhat comforting to say that I really cash risk in the
Mhm.
portfolio itself is only a certain
Yeah.
percentage. So then that number should track down. It'll eventually stabilize as you're adding new contracts and what have you. And there can be a little bit of movement seasonally, but I would say otherwise
Mhm.
it's just interesting information to have, but it doesn't have much direct correlation to
Have
much of anything
you
else.
have you done this for much longer streams?
Yep.
You
Yeah, we
have?
have some.
And does it get to a point where it's just pretty stable right
Yeah,
along?
yeah, it'll eventually settle in. Yeah, depending on where the dealer's risk per contract is, it'll settle in, 15%, 10%, whatever. It'll
Mhm.
kind of reach a place where, if the dealer just stopped selling for a period of time, then it might go all the way down to single digits or, because obviously we're continuing
Which
to
is
collect
what a lot of
payments.
people experienced during COVID
That's true.
too. Yeah.
That's absolutely right. So yeah, that
Yeah.
happens. But anyway, that's good information. Hey, Tyler in Texas. So get dealers headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah.
We're trying. That's part of
That's
I
our
can
goal.
tell before we wrap up here, I can say that's part of what's been on my mind a lot lately is Michelle and I have been spending more and more time working on our business.
Mhm.
One of the things we're doing, and Tyler, you see it, you're somebody who knows, kind of what we're doing out there in terms of, moving forward this, I'm going to call it a campaign. It's part of our mission is this White Hat Way thing.
Mhm.
And that's about just, creating, well, it's first about leading with ethics. It's helping dealers
Mhm.
understand, when you kind of lead with ethics and have a real purpose behind what you do, then
And I kind of like, we keep coming back to the known, liked, and trusted in your community and
Mhm.
by your customers. And so that's kind of, to me, encapsulates, is that the right word?
Yeah.
What White Hat Way achieves,
Right.
or, what the goal is.
Yeah.
And that's to be known, liked, and trusted in your community. And that doesn't mean you have to be soft. You can be
No.
strong, you can be compassionate, and you can do it in a graceful way.
And I think what's happened with Michelle and me, we've gotten quite clear in our purpose, and we've even started to take steps to, make sure that our messaging is all around White Hat
Mhm.
Way. And so we're even changing. I can tell
Our-
folks we're
our-
changing our
yeah.
company name. The Octane Group will
Mhm.
cease to be the name. We'll be White Hat Coaching before long. So,
Mhm.
these are all things just trying to get clear about who we are, what we stand for, and how we feel like we can help
Mhm.
dealers the most. And so this is all kind of a step in that direction. We're just trying
Yeah.
to, and for us, as coaches, we're just over here sharing freely what we think we can do to help,
Mhm.
folks, improve their business. So we're very much about helping dealers be more successful, and their
And we
customers
never
will be
run
more.
out of topics.
Yeah,
I mean, crap, we've been doing this for,
a year plus. Started in June.
no, it started in May.
May. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
3 days a week.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. There's and if we run out of stuff, we can call Shelly or Tyler or somebody else. So,
exactly.
yeah, they'll know stuff.
We
to talk
did
about.
get a request for a topic the other day, and so we'll
Oh yeah, that's right.
we'll take a peek at that and see what we can put together for a show. But if you've got anything out there that you would just like to get a little insight on, please reach out. You can PM us through social, through Facebook. I think that like on YouTube and all those, that you have an email address or a cell phone number or whatever. So just please be reach out if you've got anything. And then George, our company has always tried to live by Zig Ziglar, who's one of my favorites. If you always do what is best for your customer, you will be doing what is best for you. Yes. And we've been saying it's what we're trying to do is to show dealers that it's good business to be good to your customer. It's really, if you're good to your customer, that it just kind of comes around.
Yeah. And I think it's good business, and it's more sustainable business.
Yeah.
Like it's going to give you a longer term, give
Hey.
long-term health.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today. We will be back on Wednesday, hopefully a lot more
Lord
energy. And don't forget, August 1st, if you haven't got your ticket, you can go to Eventbrite or go to Buy Here, Pay Here Nation Television and get your ticket. So it'll be on Deal Structure. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.